Welcome, everybody, to the R&amp, a fan-based podcast focusing on Montana State athletics. We're two dudes named Ryan from the state of Washington talking about our dear Montana State. We hope you enjoy. All right, welcome back, Bobcat fans. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the R&amp. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Foley, and we have a guest podcaster in the house tonight, Tom Stuber. Tom, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm doing great. I'm happy to be on your show.
Right on. Yeah, Thorny, if you don't know, Thorny is out of the country for the next 2 weeks. He decided to take his wife on a trip to Germany, and I think he told me he was in Austria today, but he's MIA the first 2 weeks of the season. Great timing, Thorny. But Tom is pulling duties for us this week and hopefully next week. And then we had Zach Levere on the Instant Reaction show yesterday, and we thought he did a great job as well. But thanks again, Tom, for joining us.
Happy to be here.
All right. Well, listener, if you're new to the R&R, this is a fan-based podcast, and we're just happy to have you here. We're going on our 6th season, and this show is basically kicking off the Montana State football season. We've had a couple of previews, but now we're in the thick of the games. We just had our Gold Rush game, so we're going to break that down. The format for today is we're going to go over the news that just came out, talk a little bit about Scotty Humphrey. We'll go into the polls. We'll talk about Vegan's presser. We'll talk about the stats from the Utah Tech. And then we'll riff a little bit on just the game itself, some highlights and maybe some things that we didn't see or wanted to see. We'll preview the titanic struggle that will be in Brookings, South Dakota against the Jackrabbits coming up here on Saturday. We'll take some Golden Coolie questions and then hopefully won't screw anything up because this is a one-take show. We are just going live, and if it goes off the rails, well, we're just going to publish it anyway. So here we go. So that's what we got coming up right now. But first, before we do anything like that, the very first thing we normally do is talk about what's in our Golden Coolie.
What's in your Golden Coolie?
All right. We have a Golden Coolie sponsored this year. There we go. What's in your Golden Coolie is brought to you by Wilbur Ellis, your first stop for your fertilizer and farming needs in the Golden Triangle. See Shay Richter. He will get you taken care of. Thank you, Shay, for sponsoring our Golden Coolie segment. Tom and I have the same beer. Tom, what is that beer?
Coors Banquet. Golden,
Exactly.
Colorado.
Yes, it is. I went and picked that up right before the Gold Rush because of the color scheme, honestly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll get right into the news. Came out today that Scotty Humphrey, our dynamic freshman running back, was named FCS Freshman of the Week. Scotty had 114 yards on 14 carries, 3 touchdowns. And I don't know if you caught it, Tom. He did a post-game interview. He was part of the trio that got to be in front of the cameras, and it was just a pleasure catching him there. You were there, yeah.
Yeah.
His smile just across the screen, his just demeanor. He just came across such as a bright young man, just happy to be there. I hadn't heard anything from him. Obviously, we hear that he's just a stud running back. What was your take on that?
Well, first off, they hardly ever let freshmen go to a press conference. That's the first time I've ever seen a true freshman at a presser. And he was coming off a great game. He was feeling very good. He was a little twitchy under the table there. His legs are going nonstop. He was probably a little nervous about it, but no, I mean, he really handled it well. And, and he shared some, you listened to the interview, but he shared some stuff about, talked about his dad and talked about, this and that. And it was pretty cool. I mean, he was very refreshing. It was really a fun interview.
I was wondering about the freshman thing. I thought that was interesting. I thought that was a rule. Maybe that was just a choke rule that we didn't have freshmen. Maybe I'm
Yeah, I
is
think
thinking that.
not everybody does it, but it's kind of a thing around college football where I don't think it's anything that's like a written policy or anything, but just a lot of coaches don't like to send freshmen out to do interviews for whatever reason. But yeah. And speaking of freshmen, that was something I just kind of realized today when I was going through the stats. The Cats, out of the 9 touchdowns they had, 6 of them were scored by freshmen. So 3
Wow.
by Humphrey, 2 by oh, name's
Jared White?
escaping me. Jared White, and 1 by the tight end from
Schlepp.
Bozeman Gallatin. Yeah, Ryland Schlepp, and then
Mhm.
and then a freshman threw him the ball, Jordan Reed. So yeah, it was a big day for freshmen there.
Yeah, we have a bright future. I was going through the roster today, and it's not the first time I thought about that, but yeah, we have quite a few players that are, quite
Mm-hmm.
like the ranks are good below us is what I'm trying to get at right
Oh,
there. So,
definitely. Yeah,
all right.
for sure.
Well, it's good to see that. It's, totally deserved, but it's even more cool to think about that he got the award because we had like 5 running backs carry the ball. So for him to get his stats, his 3 touchdowns, 114 yards on just 14 carries,
Yeah.
pretty impressive. And the thing
Right.
that
And
stood
so
out
many.
to me, the
Go
thing
ahead.
that stood out to me from him was just his speed. He was the size and his speed. You're like, wow, how did he get to us? I think he needs a little bit more patience because he missed a couple of the holes in there, but that will come. But yeah,
Oh, yeah, for
he's
sure.
powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And they, like everybody's been saying, they've got so many running backs. It's so nice to keep them all fresh all game long. When you're able to, in the fourth quarter, it didn't really stand out in this game, but in the fourth quarter, when you're able to run, a fresh guy out there, every couple of downs, it's just another facet that MSU has that's going to, help them out as the year goes along for sure. I mean, you
Absolutely.
had Elijah Elliott, who's, people are saying he's number 5 on the depth chart. I'm not 100% sure on that, but he came into the game. He had the second most carries in the game and ended up with 53 yards. So he was averaging over 6 yards a carry. And, just the things that they do just go on and on and on statistically, for especially for running the ball. It's just kind of wild.
As a stat guy, you got to keep track of all that, don't you?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and yeah, the funny thing too is with Tommy Millott, he actually ran the ball, and he does this. I mean, he's done this before, but he runs the ball on passing downs. So it's actually a pass play, but then he takes off, and he'll get 10, 11, 12 yards or more, doing that. But the thing that he did, I'm not ready to. Don't know if you want to get into this yet or not, but the play he made that was probably for me the most impressive play of the game was on the long pass to Jared White. That was I think they were in the shotgun, but he hung around in the pocket. As a straight pass play. The pocket collapsed, and as he is so adept at doing, he got out of that and rolled to his right, but he didn't take off. He kept his eyes downfield. He kept looking, and White came open, and he didn't make a perfect pass, but he trusts his receivers, and quarterbacks have to do that, and he made that pass, and it was a great play on the other end. So it was a great play by Malott, great play by White, for adjusting to the ball. And the other thing White did, which not a lot of young players do, is he kept moving.
Yeah.
They go into scramble, and those receivers are supposed to keep moving, and a lot of times they just stand still or go to a spot and wave their hands or something. But he kept moving, got open, and then adjusted to the ball, made the catch. He mossed the guy, and then he had the ability to get it in the end zone too. So it's
Yeah, I'm
quite a
glad you
play.
mentioned the fact that Jared White kept moving. I watched that play 3-4 times. I rewound it because Jared was just going into the flat, and then when Tommy escaped the pocket,
Mm-hmm.
it was almost like he kept going on a wheel route kind of scramble drill. And
Mm-hmm.
you're right, that was just such a headsy move for Jared White, and
Right. A
an
lot like
elite
Taco
catch.
Dollar. Yeah, a lot
Yeah,
like Taco Dollar last year at NAU. He did the same thing. He was got the football IQ, I guess, to realize, hey, I need to keep working the quarterback scrambling, and it paid off.
all right. Well, before we get into too much of the game, we're gonna talk a little bit of shop here about just the presser and the polls. So I'm going to talk about the polls real quick. Let's just where did Montana State end up week after week one. They're in the same exact spot. If I'm looking at the FCS rankings right here, South Dakota State's number 1, North Dakota State's number 2, Montana State is number 3. The only big shakeup really was University of Incarnate Word went from 7 and dropped down to 10. And that kind of shuffled everybody up about 1. So Idaho is now up to 7. I'm sure everybody wants to know Montana. Montana was previously at 14, is now at 13 after their dominant win over Butler. I say that tongue in cheek. Let's see. UC Davis moves up from 16 to 15. And I think that's it. And I'm missing Weber. Weber, where are they at? Oh, there they are. 13. Weber came in at 12. So pretty much static, but that Incarnate Word did kind of shift something around. But, Incarnate Word played at FBS UTEP. I don't know too much about UTEP, but I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you lose to an FBS. That's generally pretty forgivable, especially towards the end of the year. I don't know how great Incarnate Word is this year. I know their quarterback's gone, and I don't know how many other players are out of there, but I think their whole goal is to be a FBS team at some point, and they're just kind of passing through the FCS. So, but anyway, week one, I can't take that anything really too seriously.
No,
typically
it does.
A good.
It does set up the number 3, number 1 matchup, though, for us.
Yep.
We can definitively say that going into next weekend. All right. Moving on from the polls, I think what we need to get into is the presser. So Coach Vegan comes out on Monday, always looking dapper in his suit. I don't know why he wears his suit. Do you ever get to go to those, Tom?
I have gone to the weekly ones. When I just happened to be in Bozeman. I just happened to be there this fall or whatever, this summer one time. I think it was right before the very first practice. And I was in town and I saw on Twitter that Coulter was going to this thing. And I was like, hey. So I swung up there and I got to interview one-on-one with Sebastian Valdez and Trayton Pickering and Derek Snell and Ty McCullough. I got to interview all those guys, which was really fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, Choate's pressers used to be much like must-watch TV for me. And I couldn't wait from them just because he's such a talker and I love the energy he brought. And then Coach Vegan came around and we all had to adjust to his style.
Mm-hmm.
But over the years that he started giving his pressers, you can start parsing out his mannerisms and what he says. You can start reading between the lines of what he actually means and become pretty adept at picking up some information that the common viewer might not pick up on. That's not saying I have any new information for us tonight. I'm just saying that's what I've learned from him in the past couple of years. But obviously they're going to talk about the South Dakota State. I wrote a couple of just notes down. Let's first talk about the injuries real quick. Ty McCullough, the speedster from Colorado State, he is continued to be injured, undisclosed. Do you have any information on that?
I'm pretty sure it's some kind of leg injury or foot or ankle or something. But I know that when I talked to him, he really wanted to play in this game because South Dakota State went down to Colorado State where he was at and beat Colorado State when he was playing there. So he's got a taste in his mouth for that too. But so I know he's probably a little extra bummed about not being able to play in this game too. So
that's right. I had heard that. Let's see. Lanada Alexander Jr. is still waiting some waivers from the NCAA. That's why he was not on the field. I did catch him in the replay. He was wearing a number 7 T-shirt on the sideline. Kind of crossing her fingers. Coach Vegan said, it's Labor Day. The NCAA is not working, so we still don't know. So to be determined at the time of this.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath. The way things go with the NCAA, it just seems. I know Cleavon Thomas got in that thing last year, and it just lasted and lasted. And I know Rylan Ort was supposed to be back way sooner than he was, and so yeah, I'm not holding my breath. Hate to be negative, but
yeah, I hear you.
I'm trained that way now.
I'm going to lump these three all in like a week or two away. That's Paul Broad, JT Reed, and Tyson Pottinger. JT Reed is some sort of back. Paul, I'm not sure what Paul's suffering with, or Tyson. Any news on those guys that you know of?
No.
And the one that's a
No,
real
I think.
bummer is Lane Sumner, right?
Oh yeah.
So
And I haven't got all the details on that either, but hopefully it's not as bad as it sounds. But yeah, what a deal. But I did, after he got hurt, I saw him on the sideline, and they had made a play, and he wasn't, jumping 2 feet in the air, but he was jumping around and bouncing around on the sideline. So I thought that was encouraging. But sometimes you have an injury, it just isn't that painful, and it's worse than you think or something. So, but we'll see.
just feel bad for him. He's worked so hard to come back from
Uh,
injuries almost every year, it feels like.
So
And
yeah, it's the worst thing in sports. It is just awful, and it's not just the pain and missing games, but it's just the psychological, because it's hard to wrap your head around how much time these guys put into these sports, and the sacrifices and stuff they make, and then it rolls up first game of the year, first set of basically the first series or whatever of the game, and you're out. So yeah, keep your fingers crossed, I guess, for him. Knock on wood or whatever.
well, we hope so that he can come back. All those guys, I mean, we need them. So, but that's what Coach Vegan gave us today. So we'll just roll with that. And finally, he gets to talk about South Dakota State. I remember talking to him over here in Spokane. I was able to go to the kickoff, and he kind of deflected some questions on South Dakota State. He goes, "Hey, we're focused on Utah Tech." I was like, "Okay, I get it." And Sean Chambers told me the same thing. Hey, we're focused on Utah Tech, but they smile and they're like, "But hey, man, we've been waiting for this one." And Coach Vegan mentioned that. He's like, "Yeah, that game left a mark on us. That gave us motivation from January on to get bigger, to get stronger on the defensive and offensive lines." And I could tell just right away, like Montana State's been waiting for this game come for about 7 months now, or 9 months probably, to that fact.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think they're confident. I think they know that they've made gains. I think they didn't open up the playbook at all on offense against Utah Tech. Defensively, I thought they looked better. I thought the two big plays in the game for MSU for their defense were when they got stopped on fourth down on the first drive of the game, and the defense came out and didn't, got a 3-and-out.
Yeah.
And then later in the game, or later in the first half, Utah Tech hit that long pass for 62 yards. And, that was something that Valdez was talking to me about. He was like, we need to respond better. We need to be more resilient, and I think what happened last year, they gave up, tons of big plays last year, and they kind of snowballed on them. But I think it was a lot of inexperience and just not, knowing that, hey, we gotta turn around, get refocused here. That was a bad play, but you gotta flush it. And they did. After that play, they went, 3-and-out, allowed a field goal. But that was it was a miscommunication. I'm pretty sure. I remember watching Lavelle Price Jr. running down the field, and he was kind of throwing his arms out to the side, and I think he called, the nickelback calls some of the secondary alignments and stuff, and I think whoever was playing, I think it was Stillwell, but anyway, I think he didn't pick it up, or else Price didn't make the signal right or something. But I have a feeling somebody just got caught out of position a little bit, and that guy got open. And Utah Tech can pass the ball. They aren't. They threw the ball a ton last year, and I think they were averaging way over 300 yards a game passing. So that happens, but they responded well, and I think that's one of the keys to the season for MSU defensively.
Spread and shred offense is what they talked about. I couldn't think of that term, but yeah, that was given to us last week. Hey, before we move into the Utah Tech, we'll break down the stats, and that's your wheelhouse. I know you watched the presser. Did anything pop out to you? Any closing thoughts on that?
Today's presser, not really.
Yeah.
The thing I have been picking up on, and also today is, like I just mentioned, I guess, is that I think those guys are confident. I think MSU is, they feel pretty good about themselves. And I think that, they feel like they can get out there and at least give South Dakota State a really good game this weekend. So, but yeah, no, nothing really. I watched the whole thing, and like you said, Vegan's kind of we went from Choate to Vegan, and Vegan's kind of he reminds me of Tom Osborne at Nebraska. I don't know if you ever remember watching him, but Tom Osborne was very, just to the point, kind of a Bill Belichick kind of thing. It was very uh, relaxed, or whatever you want to call it. But
Yeah.
anyhow, he reminds me of him. But the thing with Vegan too is when you watch him on the sidelines, he's very animated. He really gets after the officials. He gets after his own players, and he doesn't mince any words on the sidelines. And it's just kind of funny. He comes to the press conferences and it's kind of Bud Grant or something out there. So.
He does. He cracks me up in those suits every week too.
Oh yeah.
I was just like, man, I don't know why, but he
Yeah.
just looks so good in those suits.
Oh, yeah. Got his hair just right. Yeah.
All right, Tom. So this is Thorny's wheelhouse, and I'm going to punt it to you because you're a more stats man than Thorny is, and so take
All
us
right.
down through the stats of Saturday night.
All right. Well, I'm just going to pop into the team stats here, but the thing I was most impressed with was the passing game, and Tommy looked very mature, very focused, and there were 3 drop passes in the game that hurt his numbers. He was 8 for 14, but he should have easily been 11 for 14. He should have had another probably 30 or so yards passing. And that's unfortunate. I think they'll get that cleaned up. But, and I compared this game to last year's game. So,
Sure.
McNeese State didn't have a great year last year, and, Utah Tech didn't either. And I just kind of thought they were, somewhat comparable there in that regard overall or whatever. But, the quarterbacks combined went 16 for 22, like 231 yards, 2 touchdowns. They never got sacked, which is a credit to the O-line and all their mobility. Jordan Reed looked really good to me. The 2 passes he threw were great. He also ran for about a 20-yard gain at one point. And then when Chambers got in later, the play he ran where he passed the ball down the sideline to Ryan Lonergan he set that up beautifully. I mean, he rolled out and he sold the run, and the defenders came up on him, and Lonergan was wide open. But anyway, yeah, I think they ended up with a passer rating of 211. And the year before, they were 12 for 22. So they threw the same number of passes, completed 4 more, got about another 40 yards, and their passer rating was about 50 points better. So it shows up statistically, but, I like it when it shows up on paper and it passes the eye test too. Just those 2 plays, the one where Chambers rolled out and sold the run, which is like, they ought to be able to do that. They really ought to be able to, come out of the pocket and, because every team in the country is like, those guys love to run, and they see them do that, they're going to come and get them. The first, it was kind of a blessing in disguise when, Chambers actually made it on 4th down. I couldn't see him or the ball cross the line, but I could see his legs. And I'm like, he's leaning forward, and his feet were standing on the goal line. So
Yeah,
I
it
don't
looks
know,
so.
but I'm not knocking the refs. There's massive bodies there, and if they can't see him in the end zone, they can't say he got a touchdown. But it was kind of a blessing in disguise that way. I thought a little bit just for the defense. But the defense, they Utah Tech doesn't run the ball, but they ended up with 3.3 yards per carry, which is not good for them. But I think they were down around 2.1 when the main players were in. They picked up some yardage late in the game at garbage time, so nothing hurt there. And then passing the ball, Utah Tech threw for 260 yards. but they needed 41 passes to get him, and they threw 3 interceptions. So the Bobcats, defensively, I thought they tackled pretty well too. So stats in these kind of games are a little misleading, because we started substituting very liberally in the middle of the third quarter. So we had a lot of third stringers, and then road teams don't typically bring third string players because they can only bring so many players on the road. So our third team against their second team, it was 21-10 in the fourth quarter. So that was nice too. MSU had. I thought they had 3 sacks. The stats only say 2. I think we might have had a play where somebody, sometimes the quarterback takes off out of the pocket and they don't call it a sack. He drops back the pass and takes off and starts running, so they call it a running play. They don't do that in the NFL, but nevertheless, they didn't have us down for that. I thought we had a lot of quarterback pressures, but I don't see those on the stat sheet. Well, maybe it will be on this one. I haven't.
Far right corner.
Yeah.
Scroll over.
Yeah. Let me see here. Because they do those. I was going to look at the players or the defense stats, darn it.
Lavelle Price led us with 7 solo tackles. Kenneth Iden had a sack. McCade O'Reilly had 4 tackles. McCade looked good. He was
Seymour
a guy that
had
flashed.
a sack.
Did he?
Go. Yeah, Ben Seymour had a sack. Yeah, so they got Alston with a sack. Oh no, they got him with an interception. Where are the sacks?
Yeah, that's an interception.
Yeah, Seymour had 1 sack for 7. Iden had 1 sack for 8 yards. Where is the quarterback hurries? Okay, so we have 1, 2, Drew Polidor, Kenneth Iden, Rylan Ort, Brody Greed, Blake Heil. So you have 5 QB pressures, 2 sacks. That's pretty good. You'll take it,
especially when they're passing the ball every 3 seconds. It's a quick read and getting it out. So getting to the quarterback is hard.
Yeah, and like you said, Lavelle Price led the team in tackles, which is kind of, and Caden Dowler had an interception, and he almost had 2 interceptions.
Yep.
And the narrative all through camp has been, we're going to play both those guys, and Lavelle Price is great in coverage, and Caden Dowler is great on, stopping the run or whatever. And the complete opposite happens in the game. Price gets all the tackles. Dowler gets the pick, and so they and he almost had 2. So, and I said that the Bobcats were going to score 2 defensive touchdowns in your prediction thing. They had 2 interceptions and they set up touchdowns. So I don't know, not quite right, but
I wasn't going to call you out, but I knew.
Okay. And the kicker. I thought the kicker, kicker wasn't great. His kicks, couple of them on the extra points looked like line drives, but his kickoffs, into the end zone. He had a 48-yard punt that could have been downed on the 1, but for a first game, not bad.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I noticed that as well. In his 9 extra points, I was like, a couple of those, I was like, he's just mishitting it, like on the inside or something of his foot. And the other ones he would boom through. And I was like, well, maybe Gottsman could be that guy on the extra points and field goals. We're going to need that. And so to be determined, we haven't seen that.
Yeah.
I want to jump back to Tommy Malott a little bit.
Okay.
Well, before that, did you have any other stats you wanted to cover?
Well, just the one guy. Why do I keep forgetting his name? Jared White. Yeah, he had the great catch, and he had, the 79-yard touchdown run. And last year he played in this. It was the first game of the season, just like this one. He broke off a big run in that game too. But the athleticism that he showed on the reception was, I thought, fantastic. And I don't. The other stat too is Scott Tree Humphrey was the player of the week or whatever. And he's the first player in MSU history to go over 100. First freshman to go over 100 yards and score 3 touchdowns in a game or something like that. I can't remember if it was just the home opener or what now, but it kind of slips me. But so that's it. Enough of those stats.
Well, if they come up in our conversation, just dip into them.
Okay.
All right. So we'll talk a little bit about Tommy Malott.
Yeah.
His first couple drives, his presence definitely, you noticed
Mm-hmm.
that he was staying in the pocket a little bit more. Pickering missed that third down pass, went right through his hands.
Mm-hmm.
Aiden Garrigan dropped one right on the sideline. But these are all the same passes we've seen Tommy continue to make. The one that interests me was we got down into the red zone and he went for Derek Snell on a back
Mm.
shoulder fade.
Yeah.
Derek Snell, and he had to rush the pass because he was
A
getting some
little bit.
pressure.
Mm-hmm.
He missed a wide open Pickering on the right over the middle. They had a
Oh,
crossing
yeah.
route, and there's the trailing guy got picked off, and he was wide open. And that's not a pass I've seen Tommy hit all that much, but that's one I've been hoping
Mm-hmm.
he sees. Do you
Yeah.
think he sees the middle of the field? Is there something there?
I don't. Well, I think he does. You know, I always, I sit way up high. I get to sit in the press box, so it's really easy to see the pass plays develop. And I pick out open receivers all the time that quarterbacks on both sides of the team, both sides of the line miss. I mean, and to me, it just means it's not as easy as it looks. Obviously, they're
Yeah.
down there on the field, and they might be feeling pressure from somewhere, or they may know going into the play that a certain player should come open in a certain spot, and that's more where they're looking. So it's kind of hard to say. But he did hit Pickering down the seam on that second to last drive of the half. And I thought that was a really big moment in the game. I was like, all right, MSU's got the ball with 3 minutes to go in the half. Last year they had all kinds of problems, in the closing out the half, getting touchdowns. They'd get down and get field goals a lot, but they seem to always struggle doing that and get behind the chains a lot. And on the very first play, he hits Pickering. They get it all the way up to the 50-yard line. And then they run a play for 2 yards, so now they're 2nd and 8, and they're in passing area anyway, so they should be passing. So the next play, he overthrew Snell over on the sideline on 2nd and 8, and then on 3rd and 8, uh, Jared White was open over the middle, and he threw it a little bit behind him, but it's what White would tell you, I got to catch that, and it went through his hands, and it wouldn't have been a first down, but it would have brought up 4th and 1, and they would have went for it right around the 40-yard line, and continued the drive. Caden Dowler did a great job picking him up because he got an interception on the very next possession for Utah Tech, and then they went in and scored anyway. But on that play that you're talking about, yeah, where he missed Pickering going the other way, Snell was wide open also, but I call that corner, the devil's corner or something down there, because if the wind's blowing 10 miles an hour, it's blowing 20 miles an hour in that corner, because it gets channeled through there. The two buildings, you got that big building in there now, and now the wind just is howling in there. And then the other thing is that's right where the sun's shining in. So the sun on that play, well, I noticed that the sun wasn't behind a cloud on that play. So he's looking into the sun. He was under a little pressure, and the wind and the ball knuckled. I mean, he threw that pass, and you can see the ball. It wasn't a typical crisp pass that he throws. So yeah, that was one play I wish that they had back. But again, like I said earlier, he was 8 for 14. He had 3 drops. That's if they catch them all, it's 11 for 14. And if on that play, if all those things aren't going wrong, maybe he completes that and he has another touchdown. He's 12 for 14. He would have these really brilliant looking, pretty stats, but didn't work out that way. But it isn't always in the numbers. You gotta, you watch the game and see what's happening. You can really see, that's okay. This guy's good and he's doing well. And so, yeah.
Well, I'm glad Tommy looked more comfortable. In general, what
Mm-hmm.
came across on the television was just his command, his
Mm-hmm.
leadership. He felt more comfortable back there. He wasn't just going 1-2 run.
Mm-hmm.
When we needed the run on 3rd and long, he's such a
Mm-hmm.
weapon, which
Mm-hmm.
is just unreal. You're like, he can slip tackles so easily. What I would like to see, hopefully it's this year, a screen pass. We have such explosive, a staple of Mike Kramer's offense, right? Can we set up a bubble screen? I would love to see with some of our running backs in space with, put a bubble screen on your left side, send Connor Moore and Rush Reimer out there blocking for you, and just wreak havoc. So
Yeah.
I don't know
Well,
why we don't do that.
well, when I was talking to Derek Snell, he was, I was trying to get him to talk about the pass game because those are the two things in the whole offseason that I've been, talking about myself is if MSU can just get a little bit better in the pass game, a little bit better on defense, that'll really, really help them a lot. And those are very attainable things. That isn't like, oh God, we're going to have to bring in a couple 4-star defensive tackles, dude. I mean, they got the players, they can do this, but I was trying to get Snell to, tip off a little bit to me. And but he was like, well, he says, I can't give away any secrets right now. So, I was kind of like, who knows what they're going to do, but I think we haven't seen it yet. And I think they've worked on some things and we're probably going to see it this weekend, but what it is exactly, I don't know, but it might be your bubble screen. So don't give up on it.
Do you think Housewright's going to be calling plays?
Yeah. Yeah. As far as I know, he was suspended for one game and that was this game and against Utah Tech. So I would think that he'll be calling plays. And that's another thing that people have to, keep in mind too, is like, not having your offensive coordinator calling the plays has to have some kind of an effect on you. But they may have been scripted, before the game even got here to here's what we're going to do unless Utah Tech, pulls out all the stops and they're in the game and they're threatening us, then we're going to open it up. So, but they didn't have to do that. So probably wasn't that big of a deal that he wasn't there, but definitely, yeah, I think he's going to be up in the booth here this weekend.
So online on Bobcat Nation, you're one of the flag bearers of saying, "Hey, our defense looked a little bit better. We actually were better." What were you seeing that makes you think that?
Well, tackling, big plays. They gave up only 2 plays over 20 yards. And to a team that throws the ball all the time, and Vegan said the same thing. It's just like they're going to get a play or two here and there. And it's how you respond. And that was the other thing. They responded really well. I mean, they, when your defense, it's like in baseball, your number 3 hitter or your number 4 hitter gets up there and they strike out with the bases loaded, but it's only out number 2. The next guy comes up and he gets the hit or the home run or whatever. They call that picking up your teammate. And it's the same thing in football. The offense drives all the way down to the 1 or whatever, got 3 cracks from the 1-yard line, don't get it in. Instead of, in a lot of teams, when that happens, it's like, oh, here we go. But MSU runs out there and like the defense is like, okay, here's a chance for us to prove ourselves. And, they shut them down 3 and out. Same thing on the 62-yard gain. Okay, they got that play. Let's regroup and shut them down again. So, I was, it wasn't like they're the number 1 defense in the country at this point, but it was like you can see improvement, just in those couple of little things.
I think the secondary will have time to gel. I mean, that's going to be a process. You alluded to a kind of maybe some communication or communication stuff early on.
Yeah, but
I thought they looked good.
No, they did. Oh yeah. I mean, Simeon Woodard is good. Period. The other guy that made some really good plays was John Johnson, the JC transfer. He made a couple of really good plays. Trying to think here. Caden Dowler, obviously.
Miles Jackson knifed in, had some nice tackles, and so did Lavelle Price. He was able to get that tackle for a loss. That was a big play early on a screenplay they were trying to set up.
Right. Drew Polidor, the safety, played really well, I thought. And, and Rylan Ort's going to be good. I mean, Rylan Ort and Simeon Woodard are, our flag bearer guys. They're going to play well all year. It's the other guys, but they've got depth there. They can bring in, John Johnston. They can bring him in. They can bring in Devin Davis, the Powdrell, Andrew Powdrell, the true freshman, was on the field. He looked good. I mean, I saw, a bunch of good plays by backups, all game long. David Alston's the backup defensive end. He made a heck of a play getting that interception. They were all in there. He took it away from Kenny Iden. Kenny Iden was like, oh, I got this. And
David
Alston got
right
it.
In.
Yeah. But that's a big position. Him and Ben Seymour. I mean, MSU got beat
Yeah.
around the edge a lot last
Yeah,
year. They
we
didn't
got to
get
set the
beat around
edge.
the edge, yesterday that I remember, or Saturday that I remember. I don't think they did. So,
No.
but he and Seymour are like huge players for MSU this year. If they can solidify that spot, it's going to be a big deal. And making a play like that, making a play like Alston made, that's great for his confidence. And last year he was hurt. The year before in 2021, we're at Eastern. He's the one that got the safety. He was held. He was rushing the quarterback, and the offensive lineman held him in the end zone, and MSU got a safety out of that. And he made
Yeah.
another big play later in the game when Eastern had the ball deep on their own end, and he made a stop down there too. I think he's a good player. I just think last year he was hurt. You can see some things from him. And Ben Seymour is really fast. He's smallish for a defensive end. I think he's only about 235,
Yep.
but he's really quick, and he got a sack yesterday too. So I got a lot of production out of that position.
Well, overall, I was really pleased. The eye test was passed from just viewing from afar.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the last thing I want to talk about the game is just the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to sit next to you one time during Gold Rush. I was invited up into the press box, and I got kicked out of the press box because I was cheering. And I want to thank Bill Lamberty again for that opportunity to at least come up there. But I don't know how you do it because it's such an electric atmosphere. The way Montana's crafted Gold Rush just seems was completely unique to them. And I was telling Zach on the pod just yesterday, I don't know if SWX meant to do this, but they panned to a shot where they caught the Bridgers. And I kid you not, the sunset was the same color as the sea of yellow that was in the Bobcat Stadium. And it was such a cool and beautiful image. And the whole thing, the pageantry between bringing out the rodeo team to just a night game and then going from the transition from daytime to nighttime, so you get those colors that match the shirts. I don't know if Montana State thought that through, but it happened last night. It was on full display. It was beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, it's just a great game. It's taken a while for it to really get going, but about 3 or 4 years ago, it just started, catching on. We've gotten great weather. I mean, last year was 100 degrees, which
that was crazy.
That's not great, but it's not raining at least. And so people can wear the yellow and not have to put a jacket on or whatever. But I think the last 3 or 4 years, it's just been spectacular. I remember 3 years ago was the one that really caught me. I drove into town, and everywhere I went, and I drove around the campus and all the frat houses and whatever, having playing volleyball. Everybody had a Gold Rush T-shirt on. You went downtown, people wearing Gold Rush and Gold Rush T-shirts. And then at the game, the sun would come out. What was cool yesterday is we had some clouds roll through, so it'd be shady for a minute, and then the clouds would clear up. And from where I was sitting, that east grandstand, and I told I think Coulter or whoever, somebody else sitting next to me, and I said, man, when the clouds go away, you almost have to put on sunglasses because the sun is hitting those yellow shirts and it's just bright. But it was really beautiful. Yeah, it was really cool. And yeah, they got that thing going, and it is. I'm like, it's, that would be a game where, that's where, ESPN Game Day should come to Bozeman again, but go to that game. I think they would really like that, but that's just me.
Yeah, no doubt.
No, it was great.
All right. We could blab on about Gold Rush. It is something special to me. It's one of my favorite games. Anyways, I think, hey, let's put Utah Tech to bed. We knew we weren't going to see a lot. It was pretty vanilla, but what we did see satisfied Bobcat fans. I would say it's better than probably how Grizzly fans came out against and feel against their effort with Butler. But let's talk about the big game, as I alluded to, the Titanic struggle. That's Marty Brenneman, old Reds announcer. He would always say that on his games. Yeah, I'm a huge Reds fan, so I'm a big baseball guy. I grew up over in Ohio for a little bit, so my dad went to Ohio State, so I root for the Bengals and the Reds and Ohio State. That was my first love was Ohio State for my father.
All right. Yeah, no,
So-
my mom's my mom was from St. Paul, Minnesota, which another reason I like David Alston. He's from St. Paul, Minnesota. But yeah, I'm a big Twins fan, and they're in a little pennant race right now, and they beat
You and
Cleveland tonight,
Bill.
20-6. So yeah, well, Bill likes the Royals.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's right.
Bill's
That's
Kansas City
right.
Royals. But Tom Schultz, he likes the Twins. So he and I
Now, who am I
we're
thinking
always
of? He
talking
was our
Twins.
play-by-play guy that he went over to
Oh,
do with the
David
Tim.
Atterbury,
Yeah,
right?
Atterbury. There you
Yeah,
go.
he went to Atterbury. Went to he was. I don't know if he's still there. I don't think he is, but he was the pre-game, post-game guy for all the Twins games.
Okay, so here's how we're going to set this a little bit up. We're going to talk SDSU. Here's a long and short of it. I got some questions, some kind of narrative questions I want to ask that we can like bounce off each other, but I'll just give a little bit of backstory for the listener. SDSU was the national championship, or the reigning national champion. They in the 2022 season, they averaged about 34 points a game. They only had close games to surprisingly UC Davis, which was the second game of the season. They lost their first game of the season to Iowa, a rare score of 3-7. You remember that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then they had a close game with North Dakota State when North Dakota State was ranked number 1. I think it was like 23-21. And the other notable games, they just blew everybody else out. That when we got to them in the semifinals, they beat us 39-18. And then they went on to play North Dakota State in the national championship and beat them 45-21. So
had
they're coming off
a tough time with Colgate.
Yeah. So they're
had
coming
to do a
off.
little work against them, but yeah.
They're just kicking ass all over the board, right? And so then they have a swath of 6-year seniors, COVID seniors, as you called them earlier, they decided to run it back. So they had Stiegelmeier, who is their coach for 26 years, the most winning coach at South Dakota State. Of course, if you're there 26 years, I hope you're the most winning coach in the program. But he was an amazing coach. He steps down. Their defensive coordinator, a guy named John Rogers, takes over, and he is the new face for them. But, come up, same fabric, same expectations. And they're going to run it back. So, or they're looking to run it back. They have, I went comb through the roster today. They have 34 seniors. That's not counting the juniors, just the seniors out of, I counted 110 on their roster. So that's about a third of the roster is a senior heavy team. And a lot of those guys are preseason All-Americans. I'm going to name a couple of them for you. Isaiah Davis, you heard of him, right? He's a 6'1", 220, the Yankee twins, Jaden and Jackson. But Jackson is a preseason. This is FCS All-American. It's not just Missouri Valley, by the way. They're tight end. Zach Hines, you probably heard of Tucker Kraft, and then
who was the guy right before him? He was good last year too. He was good the year before.
Yeah, and they had one. Who's the other guy that's in the NFL that they had? I can't remember his name
or whatever.
Yeah, it'll come
for the
to
Eagles.
me. But he tight end's not an issue for them. But their offensive linemen, their left side of the line, Mason McCormick, 6'5", 320. Are you kidding me? And then Garrett Greenfield, 6'7", 320. And then they have a linebacker, Adam Bach, who is their middle linebacker, 6'1", 225, and Deshaun Gates, 5'11", 190 as a cornerback. All these guys we played in December. They were all there. They're starting 5 on the offensive line back.
They were all there the year before too.
Yeah, when we beat them, right? So that's part of it. Is like that's one of the things I was going to ask you about. Is like, hey, as good Choate would say, we've faced the giant, Goliath. We've faced the elephant. They're right there. We've touched them. We've actually beat them, but they then kicked our butts last year. Does that help us going into this game, knowing that we've played these guys tough before?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think the players know this. The thing I always try to tell fans is, just because you beat somebody 55-0, or they beat you 55-0, a score of one game, 2-8 teams beat 9-1 teams. It happens. It just happens. And I didn't think South Dakota State was 21 points better than MSU last year. I didn't think MSU was 55 points better than William and Mary, and I didn't think MSU was 34 points better than the Grizzlies. I just, on a given day, things can go haywire. MSU went into that game, Sean Chambers broke, or I don't know if he broke or sprained his ankle really bad on the, first drive of the game. Um, who knows what big effect that had, but, and the other thing was, MSU talked about, we don't, we weren't very resilient. We didn't respond well. Well, they didn't respond well in that game. They got burned a couple times early in the game, and it just snowballed on them too. So, you know, on one hand, I don't put a lot of stock into one score of one game, but on the other hand, South Dakota State is very good. South Dakota State beat North Dakota State in the championship game just as bad as they beat us. They thundered those guys, and they're every bit as good as all those good North Dakota State teams were. I think there's room for growth this year. If you want to be encouraged, there's room for growth from last year to this year. I don't think it's real big. I mean, they were, they're about as good as they're going to get at the end of last year. MSU, on the other hand, which I kind of alluded to earlier, MSU had a great run game, but got tons of room for growth in the pass game. Tons of room. They, in my opinion, they were middle of the pack. They were probably the number 6 team in the Big Sky in defense. They got a ton of room for growth there, and they were really inexperienced last year. They lost a ton of good players. Daniel Hardy, Troy Anderson, Chase Benson, to name 3. There's a couple other really good players on the team. So, I think they come in this year, they got a lot more experience, and they're going to be a lot more resilient. And I think they showed a little bit of that, already. And so, yeah, I'm confident that MSU is going to definitely put on a better showing. And I'm not ruling out them winning, but South Dakota State is, as good as you get in this division.
Here's a loaded question. What does this game mean to Montana State?
Well, it might mean something, and then again, it might not. It's too early to say just what it means. I think, if they go out and play good, and if they're improving, and if they're, if they're doing the things that they said they've been doing, and if they're going to get, if they're getting better, and I said this on Coulter's podcast too, MSU could end up going 8-3, but still be one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the playoffs. If MSU can go out on the road and just go 3-2 in these 5 killer games that they have, pick whichever ones you want for them to win. They're a good team. You go 3-2 and do that, you're a good team, and you've got that in your hip pocket if you go on the road in the playoffs. You've been out on the road all year, and you did pretty well. You didn't go 11-0, or you didn't go 10-1, which is kind of what they want. But still, I mean, this isn't a team like, oh, well, we're 8-3 and we're not even seeded and everybody wants to give up on it. I would definitely not do that. And a great example of that is South Dakota State was 8-3 in 2021. They played 1 home game, 1 on the road, won 2 games, came to Bozeman. They were down 3 at halftime, down 7 at the start of the 4th quarter. MSU gets a interception by Simeon Woodard, and a couple plays later, they're in the end zone and up 14. But that's a close game all game. I mean, They were in that game and could have just as easily have won it and been in the championship as an 8-3 team. And that 8-3 team lost a game on the last play of the game to South Dakota. They beat North Dakota State that year. MSU is good. Is MSU good enough to go 5-0 on the road? Is MSU good enough to beat South Dakota State on the road? Well, maybe not. But does that mean MSU is, just one of the teams? It'll have to be a lot worse than what I think it's going to be for me to, take that or believe that. So, yeah.
So one more question on SDSU. What coming out of Saturday would make, outside of a win, what would make Bobcat fans feel good?
Oh, I think if they, give them a good game, show the ability to move the ball, show the ability to, make South Dakota State work for their touchdowns this time. I mean, South Dakota State, they blew up and down the field there in the first half, and it was hard to watch. But I think if MSU can slow them down and, just I mean, people look at the final score so much, so I want to say, well, if they don't only lose by a touchdown or 10 points, everybody's going to feel good, but to me, sometimes you lose by 10 points because you scored 14 points in the last 5 minutes of the game to make it look good or
Yeah,
whatever.
right.
And sometimes you lose by a lot. And a good example of this is you lose by a lot, but you gave up a bunch of points, even though you were tied in the fourth quarter or something. The good example of that is that playoff game that MSU played against NDSU in Bozeman. MSU was leading 17-14 at the start of the fourth quarter, and ended up losing 42-17. North Dakota State scores 28 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. They got the ball back on one play. Lorenzo Davis is running the ball. He runs into his own offensive lineman and fumbles it.
I
And North
remember
Dakota
that.
State gets it. And on the next play, I think McNorton, the running back, ran it in. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and then everybody talked about how MSU got smoked by North Dakota State. I'm like, what? So, yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to get on the same page with a lot of fans. I'm on Bobcat Nation bickering back and forth about how we watched the game. I didn't see the game the way you saw it,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, for me, if you're asking me, I think if MSU can just keep the big plays down, make South Dakota State work for their scores, show some effectiveness moving the ball. They lose the game, whatever, 35-21 or 35-24, and it isn't somebody scoring, a bunch of points at the end of the game. I mean, and MSU's got a lot to improve on. If they can just show that they're improving in those areas, I think you should walk away feeling okay about it if they lose. Obviously, if they win, they're the greatest team and the best team in the country. All of a
Yeah,
sudden.
and
So,
that's a whole nother narrative, right? Then we
yeah,
come out to the number
yeah.
one team in the nation, and then how do we handle
Mm-hmm.
that? Last
Yep.
time we were number one in the nation, it didn't go so well for us. Um, what I'm looking for, I think I was thinking about this today. If Montana could get 3 or 4 stops on defense, get off the field, maybe an interception or a turnover would be key.
Mm-hmm.
I think Montana State's offense is going to be okay. I think we're going to
Mm-hmm.
be able to open up the playbook a little bit and showcase some of our new toys, essentially, that we've been kind of hoping to see that we didn't get to see against Utah Tech. I don't think Montana State's going to win. I don't predict games on here, but I don't think Montana State's going to win. I'm going to like hell for it, but to be just realistic, I probably think 7 to 10 to 14 point deficit would be realistic. I'll totally eat crow if that. I would gladly eat crow if that it's closer, or if we pull off the upset. But
Mm-hmm.
to me, what I really want to see is the defense show up. I want to see some pressure on Gronowski, kind of like what we did to Oladokin, right? So that's how we got to
Yeah.
him. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
their size on the offensive line that year in Bozeman clearly was bigger than what we had on our defensive line, but it was the pressure created from Daniel Hardy, Troy
Mm-hmm.
Anderson on time blitzes, stuff like that,
Mm-hmm. Amandre
big time plays
Williams.
that made
Mm-hmm.
him feel, second guess some stuff back there for him, and just created disruption for that Jackrabbit offense. So that's what I'm looking for.
I think that's a good thing to look for. Yeah, I mean, MSU's defense. If I could just pick one thing that I'd like to see MSU get better at, I would go with the defense. I think they can. If the defense can improve, it'll take the team even further than the passing game. If it improves, will take them. So, but yeah, creating that pressure and yeah, just putting some stress on their offense is huge, like you said.
But if it doesn't go away, not all is lost. If one thing Vegan has showed us, his teams get markedly better throughout the season. And
Mm-hmm.
chances are we run into these guys again. Hopefully we run into these guys again, right? We're in the position
Mm-hmm.
to do so. So
Oh
it's
yeah,
going to be a
no,
huge game.
you said a mouthful there. Yeah, Vegan is great in-game adjustments, and then during season adjustments, he's proven like he's 100% on that. And one thing I was going to point out is he's never lost to the same team twice.
Ooh.
So they lost to the Grizzlies, and then the next year smoked them, and then but North Dakota State one time. I mean, the losses MSU has had have been to really good teams. The only loss that they one of the losses they had, they avenged. Of the other ones, it was North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Oregon State, and Wyoming. So, and they barely lost to Wyoming. So, yeah. So don't give up.
Bobcat Nation will be glued Saturday night. I cannot wait. I can't wait to just, get all the content. I know I'm going to probably listen to Coulter's show. I can probably have some stuff coming out this week. And I can't wait. It's just going to be an epic game. Mm-hmm. And it just happens to fall. I mean, this game was on our schedule years ago. And it just, circumstance, it just is just cool. So,
yeah.
Awesome stuff. All right. Hey, let's close this up. Let's get into some Golden Coolie questions, fan submitted questions. We will do that, and then we'll tie a bow on this episode. I'll start us off. Belligerent Bobcat. I don't even want to ask this question because it's just stupid, but it's all over the pod right now, or excuse me, all over Bobcat Nation. He says, why do people believe the 4-2-5 defense was created for Troy Anderson? Belligerent Bobcat, I'll answer that real quick. I think it came from, and I'll ask for forgiveness if I'm wrong on this, but I think this was a Big Sky breakdown, Coulter knew on his, Brooks knew on his conversation. I'm just going to stop right there. That's it.
Well, yeah, that's a good place to stop.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, Troy Anderson is such a dude that, when you don't have an answer for something, you say, oh, because of Troy Anderson, So, yeah.
Good point.
Why is the earth round? Well, Troy Anderson made it round, so that's why.
All right. What's the next one, Tom?
Will we score more than 30, and will it be enough to win? Wow, that is a great question. I mean, that's right on the edge. That's kind of where I'm looking too. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and say yes. And yes, I think if we score 30, that'll be enough to win the game. I think MSU's, the capability for them to do it is there now. The way he's asking the question, it sounds more, it isn't, do we have the ability to score 30 and will it be enough to win? It's, will we? So I'm going to say yes. And I think I will just say maybe on the second one, but yes, it could be. Okay. Sorry, Bleeding Blue.
I think if we score 30, coin flip. Can we score 30? I think we will.
Yeah.
Bleeding Blue always asks good questions. All right. Longtime Cat says, who starts at running back this week? I think it's Julius Davis. That's the number one on the depth chart. So that was answered by that. Who's the leading rusher against SDSU at quarterback or running back? Who and why? Leading rusher, Scottree Humphrey. I'm going to go with him again. That's not I don't think Tommy Mott's going to be our leading rusher. I hope it's not. Does Tommy have more rushes or completions against Utah Tech? He had 7 carries, 8 completions. I'm going to say he has more completions. I'm being optimistic. I don't know. If this all goes bad and Tommy just does Tommy ball, then I'm completely wrong on all of that.
All right. My turn?
Yep.
Okay. Montana Bob, he says, rushing over under, the number of running back with 100-plus yard games. He's got an answer. Oh, the over under 6. Okay, is he talking both teams or just one? I don't know. The number of QBs with 100.
I read this earlier. I think this is for the season.
Oh, that might make sense. Okay. Well, number of running backs, 100-plus yard games, 6. I'm going to go with the under on that one. And because they split the ball up so much, the number of quarterbacks with 100-yard games, 3. I'll go over on that one.
So you're going to go over the number of quarterbacks. So over 3 quarterbacks with 100-plus yards.
Oh, I thought it was
on rushing.
Sorry, I guess I read it wrong. Yeah, I don't think 3 different quarterbacks are going over 100 yards.
Okay, that's the way I read it.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah.
All right.
Under on both.
All right. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. All right. Page 20. This is one of my favorite ones. Missoula Cat fan says, you're creating a team with players over the last 20 years at quarterback between the following 4 players. You need to start one, bench one, cut one, or cut two. Excuse me.
I'm glad you got this one.
Okay, you need to start one, bench one, and cut two. Who you got? And he gives us Lule, McGee, Prukop, and Malott. I'm gonna go. I'm starting Lule. I will always start Lule, and then I'm probably keeping McGee. So there I am, and I'm cutting Prukop and Malott.
All right. Well, I'm not going to be a total wimp. I'll go in there with you, but I would go McGee and then Lule, but they're one and 1A. Malott's just in his, it's too new. So I'm like, but I'm not cutting him. I'm going to bench him. And start one, bench one, cut two. So I guess I'm cutting both Malott and Prukop. All right.
Okay.
But I got Malott ahead of Prukop.
So when I read this earlier, I made it a little bit more interesting in my mind. I said you can only cut one and you bench two. Who you cutting if you have to cut one of those?
Prukop.
Yeah. Same.
I mean, he's a fantastic athlete, but the thing he didn't do was, MSU had a couple of chances to win some games late, and he didn't get it done. And if he had, then I'd have a whole different thing. But that Eastern Washington game, the big classic game where Vernon Adams scored, and they went for two and they got it, and we still had time, and we drove down, got into inside Eastern's territory, and Sean Johnson was on a wheel route wide open on the sideline, and had he hit him, it's a first down in field goal range, and we Prukop took two cracks, I think, into the end zone, or at least one, and anyway, it fell incomplete. And then the other one was against North Dakota, and at North Dakota, and I won't belabor the point. Got a chip on my shoulder about it.
You're still carrying that one, aren't you, Tom?
I'm carrying that one. Yes.
All right. Let's see. I'm going to go down to Joe Bobcat. He wrote an entire paragraph. So let's see if I can paraphrase it. He says, "My Golden Coolie question: what qualities are most important for a team to travel well, and how do coaches instill those qualities into their team? And have our coaches done that?" I love questions like this. We talked about this a little bit beforehand. Sure, let's answer this because we know.
Yeah.
I'm going to punt this to you, Tom. This is yours.
All right. This one stuck out to me. I saw this one, and I put some thought into it, actually.
Okay.
And, why do they not travel well in general? Well, why do FCS teams in general not travel? I don't know if that's true in any more sense than it is for NFL or FBS or anybody else. So I don't know what to really do with that one. What gives home teams such an advantage, even those that are clearly overmatched going into the game? And, it's just the usual stuff. It's the familiarity and not having to travel. And, these are young guys. These are college players, and they're, loading. A lot of them are, just not, used to it, and they're sidetracked on all kinds of different things, or, might be cute girls at their motel. I don't know. There's just different things going on. But I don't. I just think that what helps a team be good on the road is having a good defense. If you're a good defensive team, you go on the road. That's half the problem right there. For the most part, FCS teams end up playing. They might have a 5 or 6 game road schedule, but a lot of them have FBS teams on their schedule. So that's a problem right there. When you get into the playoffs, it's the playoffs are set up so that the good teams have the home games. So, the good teams are winning a lot of the playoff games too. But even those that are clearly overmatched going into the game, I just think it's young guys on the road getting distracted. That's it.
I do think a little bit different than Choate has done it, but I think Coach Vegan has instilled a really solid mental foundation for these guys that they just don't flinch. And I really like that. Choate did it with bravado and grit, and I don't know, just Vegan's got that difference about him where he just carries that big stick, but he doesn't have to tell you about it. He's just like, this is what we do. And it took me a while to kind of get on that bandwagon. But it kind of goes back to this question is like, has our coaches done that? I think so.
Yeah.
Just, we hear about these guys always talk about, if you like in the pressers afterwards, they talk about the mental toughness that they forge. They do things with the strength coach. They do things with book studies, and the way coach talks about it. He's like, oh, we always bring these scenarios and situations, and we say this is bad play, next play.
Yeah. And I think if you're talking specifically about MSU, I mean, MSU has been good. They were really good on the road in 21. I mean, they barely lost to Wyoming, right?
Yeah.
And then they lost to the Grizzlies, but, I know we lost an offensive lineman before that game. And, the Grizzlies beat MSU with their defense and their special teams. I think they had like 4 big punt returns. They messed up MSU messed up a field goal, and a guy picked up the ball, ran it in for a touchdown, and then they scored early on kind of a broken play.
Yeah.
So, I think MSU did a lot of the things right that they needed to win that game. But I mean, MSU's offense was just overwhelmed that game and did absolutely nothing. So they lost that game. But MSU went on and beat Sam Houston State that year. They beat Eastern Washington on the road that year. They almost beat Wyoming that year. Last year was just a whole different story, but they had a lot of extenuating circumstances too. I mean, I got to cut them some slack when they played Eastern Washington. Tommy Malott gets hurt. He goes out of the game. Eastern scored 2 big touchdowns early, big running touchdowns, and then they hit a bomb later and whatever. So it was just a weird game. MSU should have walked away from Eastern in that game. They didn't. And then they got down at NAU. And, I think might have been part of the deal, might have been just Vegan's first time going to NAU, maybe. I don't know. But MSU, I heard from several good sources, was gassed in that game. They were really in bad shape. So, but they got burned for a bunch of big plays in that game. Those are the 2 that really stuck out on the road where, it didn't look too good. But I mean, they've shown that they've got the ability to do it. They've done it, so and I think this is a whole different team this year. So
all right,
it's always different. Every year is different.
It is, man. It is. All right, let's go on. Blue and Gold. Blitz says, who has more total yards at the end of the season, Humphrey, Sumner, or Elliott? I'm going, golly, that's a tough one. Elliott? I think he stays healthy. He just seems to stay healthy. I'd like to say Humphrey. I don't think it's Sumner given his injury, but Elliott, Elijah Elliott.
I'm with you. Yeah, I mean, he didn't get to play in the game until late yesterday, but as you noted already, Sumner's out, so he's moving up the ladder. And last year, he was kind of like the last guy left, and he played great. So, yeah, and he's a pretty good. I think he's a capable receiver. I remember him catching I think he caught a big pass in that UC Davis game, took it down about the 5-yard line or whatever too. So.
Yeah. All right, last one I think we're going to ask for tonight is Cats R Us says Tomcat88 talks about plays longer than 20 yards by the opponent. I'm sure the Jackrabbits will have theirs, but how many? And how many is too much for the Cats to overcome?
All right. Well, they are going to have theirs. And I looked it up today, and they had 7 last year. Okay. They had 4 passing and 3 rushing. And I think they're going to have either 3 or 4. So I'll go 3 or 4, 3.5, whatever. And and how much is too many? If they come out and start hitting them early and they end up with 5 or 6, I mean, I think 5 or 6 will probably be too many for MSU to overcome.
Yeah, agreed. How many does Montana State have?
In that game?
Big plays.
Yeah. Last year. Well, last year.
What are you predicting for Saturday?
Yeah, about the same. MSU is going to get some plays. I get 3, 4, 5. I'll go 4. I'll go 4 each team. 4 over 20 plays for each team.
All righty. Tom, you are the guest podcaster. I'm going to let you pick who has the best question. They're going to win the Golden Coolie.
Well, geez, I want to go with Cats R Us because he put my name in there and everything. I thought that was pretty cool. But the question the day, I really like I really like the quarterback question. That was tough. I mean, that had me thinking all day.
All right, Missoula Cap fan. Woo! Good job,
There you
buddy.
go.
All right, I will send you another Golden Coolie. I know you have one. Right on, dude. All right, Tom. Hey, I think that's it, man. I think we actually did it. It's a huge game coming up Saturday, 4:00 West Coast time, 5:00 Montana time. I think it's 6:00 South Dakota time. I don't know what that is. Is that Central Time Zone? Anyways,
Yep.
Covers all the bases for us. But I think we're going to be back at it next Monday. We'll start recapping that game, and we'll talk about that when it comes then. Got anything else?
On record, so I don't have anything else, but just don't hold anything I said against me.
All right, man. Well, we always end this episode with the Go Cats, so I need a Go Cats from you.
All right, go Cats.
Go Cats.
That's as good as I can do.
All righty.